somebody I consider a very close friend of mine owns a company, Refuge Medical, that makes really high-end kits, blowout kits, first aid kits, all kind of different medical kits for all different applications. They're used by the military, they're used by civilians. And I get to talk to him regularly. We talk business, we talk life, we talk scripture. And I was thinking about one of his kits the other day. He's coming out with some different ones all the time. And the biggest thing that they preach, or one of the biggest things that they preach, is being able to stop the emergency, stop the bleed, stop whatever the life-taking thing is going on in your body, whether it be tourniquet, which I have them all over the place. I have one of his IFAK called the Bear Fac right here in the back of my truck, among some others. But stopping the bleeding is so important. And I took a class from them years ago when we were first becoming friends. And it's amazing, if you don't work around the medical field, how quickly somebody can bleed out from something like an arterial break. From whatever it's from, loss of limb, shooting, stabbing, cutting, whatever. It's amazing. We watched some videos of a guy that gets shot in his femoral artery and just how fast he bleeds out. So obviously, among other things, stopping the bleed, some of that's tourniquets. Anyway, the reason I'm thinking about this and talking about this when it comes to my mental health channel and mental health studies is that being able to detect and stop the bleed is something that needs to happen very quickly, but we have ways to do that, whether it's clotting factors, whether it's bandages, whether it's, packing the wound, whether it's tourniquets. Once you assess where it's coming from, which is often fairly quick in an emergency situation, you got to stop the bleed. You have to stop the bleed right now. One of their t-shirts, I don't know if they still sell it, says like, carry an effing tourniquet, which you should. I do. I have one on my ankle, I have one on my door. They have a great ankle kit. I have one in the Bear Fac in the back. Anyway, carry an effing tourniquet. I agree with them. If you're going to carry things that make holes in people, and I do, and you should too, after you're well trained with it, you should probably carry something to stop the problems that those holes create, if possible. So anyway, there's this whole idea about detecting the bleed and stop the bleed, stop the bleed, stop the bleed, stop what's going on. When it comes to mental health, it can be a bit more complicated than locating where this blood is coming from, but you can do it. And most importantly, once you do it, you need to stop the bleed immediately. If you're going to address something like bleeding in an emergency situation rapidly, and that makes sense to me, it should make sense to you, why are you not immediately stopping the bleeding on the mental health side? Many of you can actually identify exactly where you're bleeding out. Is it your family? Is it your work? Is it public safety? Is it your military service? Is it the people around you? Where are you bleeding out to them? What part of your life, if not stopped the bleeding immediately in that part of your life, is going to kill you? So many people come into my office and they're massively depressed, massively anxious, massively angry, massively guilty. And sometimes they may not use those words. But if that's where they're bleeding out, and it's bleeding out in a manner that's going to kill them or their family, what kind of idiot doesn't want to stop that bleed immediately? Sometimes getting a professional to help you understand why you're bleeding is important. Sometimes just getting some first aid on scene is important. Sometimes, some of you like to really hang on to that bleeding. Some of you have gotten so good at the bleeding out mentally being your personality, the depression, the victimization. Some of you have gotten so good at it that I don't know. I think some of you are afraid to let go of it. Some of you know you're depressed, and that the reason you're depressed is that you repeatedly identify yourself by something that's gone wrong, something you did wrong, a series of things that went wrong, a moral injury. Even more, come to my office and talk to me online about the things that other people are doing to them. Now, trauma aside and the changes that your brain and body may experience because of traumatic things, you holding on to those traumatic things, holding on to what you believe about yourself because of those things, you holding on to what other people have done to you, sounds so selfish. And to not understand that that is bleeding out baffles me. I can understand those that come and need some help identifying it, understanding it. Where does it come from? Why am I doing this? Most importantly, what do I have to do to make this bleeding stop? My family's falling apart, my marriage is falling apart, my work is falling apart, I'm falling apart, my spirituality's falling apart, my finances are falling apart. You're bleeding out in those areas. Yet you think you're just going to sit back and just soak in them and just deal with it, or worse, continue to purposefully perpetuate the bleeding by being the poor you. Well, I'm the man of the house, I'm just going to have to deal with it. Really? Really? You think it's not affecting anybody else? Well, my marriage is falling apart, I guess it's over. I don't know, maybe. I'm not a marriage and family therapist. Mostly because you don't get the truth from both sides anyway. And most of them just want to fix the other person while saying that they're going to fix themselves. But if you're bleeding out, why are you not getting on top of this? What in the holy hell is keeping you from seeking help from somebody that knows what they're doing? Grab all the self-help books you want. There's nothing wrong with some self-help. But what are you doing letting yourself continuously bleed out? Do you think you're just going to lay there and things are going to get better? Stop the bleed, you fool. Maybe there's an analogy for carrying an effing mental health tourniquet. But so many people I see just want to sit there in their anger, sit there in what other people have done to them, sit there in what the family's doing, what the husband's doing, what the wife is doing, and they're not bothering to put a tourniquet on this to stop what's going on now so we can get in there and repair it. Carrying an effing mental health tourniquet already. Stop the bleed.